Main attack beauty attack 1v1 attack favorite attack has the attribute of a 10,000 person fan long-haired beauty attacks versus gentle noble young master receives microbiologists believe that this is just an ordinary time travel mission, and they just need to cover up their faces and play the role of a highly skilled NPC in a routine manner, but I didn't expect everything to be in chaos. Firstly, their first love from 100 years ago made a brilliant debut, and the two of them had no choice but to be entangled in a series of conspiracy whirlpools, but during this period, my wife always suffers from amnesia. What can I do? When millions of people choose not to make salted fish, every world will be turned upside down. Chapter 1. A beautiful high cold vase. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Microorganisms have been forcibly introduced by the system to cross planes. In front of me was a vast expanse of whiteness, and in my eyes were still the lingering charm of the climax. Dida. The bright red blood slid down his fingertips, and he was stunned for a moment. He lifted his hand in confusion, red and white contrasting, stimulating his eyes. He inexplicably covered his lips with his hand dripping with blood. Sweet. His beauty is like a delicate sun that I dare not look directly at, but it is hard to part with. His beauty is jealous, heartbreaking, crazy, and soul-wrenching. Enough, don't exaggerate. Micro-business is back from vacation. Really, When Zhang Wantang saw the Weisheng merchant walking out of the crossing door, the news in the group was still ringing. He wore a black trench coat and marten boots, his half-length ink hair fluttering in the air, as mysterious and elegant as ancient Greek sculptures, especially his handsome and infuriating face. The face that topped the list of the most wanted to kiss faces. Remained calm as usual. Just like the arrival of a divine being. Beautiful, Zhang Wantang's heart beats incessantly. He took a cold breath and waved his hand high, Weisheng. The amber-like pupils of glass flowed in the sunlight, capturing the soul. Despite a faint smile, he still made people unable to resist stopping. Long time no see. Zhang Wantang smiled and said, "It's been a long time since we last met. Isn't it okay to be separated? Come in quickly, everyone hasn't seen you for a long time. You miss you so much." The microbiologist remained silent and glanced back. A staff member who was running errands pushed a large tin box towards them. "I'm really sorry for taking so many days off. I brought some things for everyone and it's just a way to apologize." At the entrance, there was a large group of people, all of whom were overjoyed as they gazed at the large iron box, with a few eyes flying towards the microbiologist. "Oh, how embarrassing to take this. Weisheng is so polite." "Yeah, everyone is a laborer, so why bother to make you spend money? Lao Zhang, why don't you quickly invite someone in? What's wrong with standing outside?" After a gap of 12 days, microbusiness has once again entered the workforce. Zhang Wantang watched as everyone's expectations for gifts were even higher than those of Weisheng Shang. He felt a bit embarrassed and was about to say hello when he saw Weisheng Shang shaking his head and saying, "I won't go in anymore. You guys are busy, I have to go find Minister Tian." Everyone was busy dividing the gifts, and Zhang Wantang couldn't bear to look straight at him. He walked up 2 steps and said, "Do you want me to take you there? Could you please take me over, Brother Zhang?" With a light tap on the door, Weisheng Shang saw Tian Yu's slightly guilty face as soon as he entered. "Minister Tian is busy." Tian Yu shook his head and pointed to the chair in front of his desk, saying, "Sit down." Weisheng Shang smiled and said, "I won't sit anymore. I'm a bit anxious and want to apply for the right to return to the previous world." Tian Yu was stunned for a moment, then pretended to be mature with his immature face and asked, "Can you tell me what the reason is?" Microorganisms have a strong desire to return to that world again. As for why, it may be because there is a patient in that world who he was unable to save in time, or the attraction of a world that forces him to go back again. I seem to recall some past events. Remembering past events. Upon hearing this answer, Tianyu was both shocked and delicately delighted. Can it be an illusion? She sorted out the wording and said, after all of us have been erased from the memories of the original world after coming from 30,000 worlds. Without exception, do you have this idea because you have experienced a similar world before? Their department is called the White Moonlight Department, also commonly known as the Elderly Care Department, which is the most leisurely position in the Transportation Bureau. Wei Xingshang used to be a staff member in the Pharmaceutical Department, but due to too many scenes, the original plot often collapsed. For example, working as a family doctor in the world of the CEO's beloved wife caused the male and female protagonists to break up for him. For example, working as an imperial physician in the imperial city, asking the empress in the harem to fly moths to the fire for him. There are countless cases like this, and any situation where a micro-business appears is messed up. However, the Transportation Bureau is reluctant to impose any punishment on him or dismiss him. It's better to find him a more leisurely position with fewer scenes, and if necessary, fill the scenes for the Crossing Bureau as a mascot. In short, 9 out of 10 promotional plans from the travel agency use photos of micro-businesses as covers to attract readers' interest. These photos are almost all taken from recorded videos from 30,000 different worlds and often serve as photo albums, making many people in our department unable to put them down. The microbiologist shook his head and said, "It's not an illusion, would never make such a mistake." Minister Tian. The voice of Wei Xingshang softened, causing Tianyu's eyes to tremble. She looked up at Wei Xingshang, her amber eyes focused on her, as if she was the only one in her eyes. Tianyu thought to himself, this cannot be achieved by force. Are we going to use the beauty trick? However, Wei Xingshang did not have such a meaning. He understood it with emotion and reason. Minister Tian, where exactly do we come from? I believe not only me, but also tens of thousands of colleagues will be curious about their origin at some moment, right? Tianyu nodded subconsciously and said, yes. Ah no. Pooh. How could I just be trapped in words like this? Wei Xingshang stood up and bowed slightly to her. Please give me this opportunity, Minister Tian. Tianyu was startled and immediately stood up. If someone sees this, they must be drowned by the spit star. Where, isn't it just a follow-up right? I'll give it to you. Just prepare a little bit, and I'll approve you after your transit warehouse freeze is over. Wei Xingshang straightened his waist and lowered his eyes to look at Tianyu, with a smile in his eyes, like the spring water lightly kissed by willows. Thank you very much, Minister. Watching his figure disappear into the office, he was led to the crossing platform. Tianyu slowly slid down the office chair, only to see his head in the end. Quickly sharing in my mind in the Micro Business Support Association. Tianyu. He wants the right to return to the world, has he? Fallen in love. After the microbiologist walked out of the office, the warmth on his face faded away. He was a bit dazed, as if he had been deliberately imitating someone's every move for hundreds of years. Chapter 2. Inducing factors appear. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The 3-year enrollment examination of the Shushan School has attracted the admiration of people from all over the world. The mountain disciples were in full swing in the competition, while Wei Sheng, dressed in a mysterious robe, was refining medicine on the cold and elegant Panyan Mountain. This competition is the plot point where the world's plain masters shine for the first time. But as an elder of Panyan Mountain, he has always lived in the deep forest for a long time, undisturbed by ordinary people and indifferent to worldly affairs. Last time, he thought the world wouldn't be as peaceful as this. Just as he was bidding farewell, an unexpected guest climbed up the Yunshan Mountain. The person rushed into Panyan Mountain with a piercing cold, stained with blood. The microbiologist looked at the gradually transforming pill and breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Perhaps this time, he can be saved. The elixir is refined over a period of 749 days. That person is full of chronic illnesses and various illnesses mixed together, which is why there is no cure. But now, nothing may have happened yet. Before everything happens, do your best to keep him alive. Qin Feng, Tang Fengwu. He walked down the climbing cloud mountain with the clouds, put on a mask that could cover his entire face, and Shi Shiran arrived at the competition venue. The immortals were originally sitting on a high platform, all with a lofty and majestic image, inspecting these disciples who came to seek enlightenment. Now, when they see Wei Xingshang descending the mountain, they are all surprised. They stood up and bowed to the Weisheng merchant, giving up their position. Wei Xingshang nodded lightly as a greeting and sat in the position given by the second elder Xuezueyu without looking back. Xuezueyu leaned over and asked, "Senior brother, why are you so interested in coming today? Climbing Cloud Mountain is too desolate, find a disciple who understands oneself." Xuezueyu felt even more surprised upon hearing this, but due to the indifferent nature of Wei Xingshang, he didn't ask much. Tang Fengwu has a slender figure, and his movements are as light and graceful as a wandering dragon. Unlike the protagonist's grand opening and closing techniques, he is gentle with strength and tough with resilience. Xuezueyu noticed his gaze and turned his attention to Tang Fengwu, saying, "This is a good seedling. Among this generation of disciples, he is also a talented person." Wei Xingshang. It's just him. The chief disciple of Zhan Qingfeng suddenly spoke up, but Wei Xingshang gave him a gentle glance and said, "Why not?" Who would have thought that he only said one sentence, and the disciple suddenly knelt down, sweating profusely. "No. I dare not." Xuezueyu smiled and made amends for his eldest disciple, saying, "Senior brother, who has been living in Panyan Mountain for a long time, is unaware. Over the years, when recruiting new disciples in Shu Mountain, not only do we need to screen out disciples with excellent abilities through martial arts competitions, but we also need to go through multiple levels later to ensure that they have a pure background and no distractions." "No need, I'll take him," said the microbiologist calmly. Xuezueyu fell silent, but on the other side of the Wei Xingshang, the three elders of Beishiling Ridge, the main moon bridge, suddenly shouted angrily, "Wei Xingshang, don't bully people too much. If you never go out to take care of affairs in Shu, then it's okay. If you attract a member of the demonic realm, wouldn't it be an adventure for our entire Shu Mountain? A person from the demon realm." With Moon Bridge as the leading bird, those elders who had already had criticisms of Wei Xingshang began to criticize him. Wei Xingshang sat in his seat, quietly listening to them express his dissatisfaction. It's nothing more than blaming him for ignoring the internal affairs of Shu, and letting Xuezueyu take responsibility for everything. The various scripts that followed also remained unchanged from their roots. He got tired of listening and stood up. The noise around him suddenly faded away. At this moment, the outer disciples who were competing in martial arts suddenly suffered from one spiritual weakness after another, and collapsed one after another. Wei Xingshang looked at the group of people with painful expressions and said in a low voice, "You are so weak. If I go out of the mountain, how long can you hold on?" He finally turned his gaze to Xuezueyu and said, "Junior brother, he is talented and has exceptional abilities. He just likes to walk in the dark with a heart in his heart. Although I am separated from the world when climbing Mount Yun, there are records of the pills that I send to your doorstep every year. Since junior brother Xue is in charge of the internal affairs of Shu Mountain, big and small, I believe my hard work must have been sent to all the mountains." As soon as these words were spoken, a guilty expression flashed across Xuezueyu's face. Wei Xingshang no longer cared about what these rabble people were imagining, and Shi Shilan flew down from the high platform and stood in front of Tang Fengwu, who was enduring discomfort. "Would you be willing to worship me as your teacher?" This statement shocked everyone present, including Tang Fengwu. Someone was indignant and said, "What's the point? He hasn't passed the competition yet. The martial arts competition in Shushan is unfair." With a wave of his sleeve, the group of aggressive merchants immediately knelt down and couldn't get up. But I saw the young man in front of me furrowing his brows and gripping his clothes tightly. With a movement in his heart, Wei Xingshang regained his pressure, and everyone on and off the Shu Mountain gasped for breath like they had encountered life after a disaster. He turned a folding fan into his hand and lifted Tang Fenwu's chin, saying, "Follow, or not follow." Tang Fenwu looked up with a hint of humiliation flashing through his heart, but he lowered his eyelashes and suppressed his displeasure. "Thank you very much for the favor of the medicine immortal. The disciple has not yet passed the admission assessment, still." A crisp round of applause rang out, and Tang Fenwu stared at the person in front of him who had slapped him in the mouth with a fan. There was no color in that person's eyes, as if this action was taken for granted. "If you refuse, don't rush to say it. If Shan Qingfeng can teach you, I can teach too. If they can't teach, I can teach too." After speaking, his well-defined fingers lightly touched the red corners of Tang Fenwu's mouth. He didn't expect it to be so fragile, but with a gentle touch, it hurt. "Does it hurt?" The voice of concern from the medicine doctor was as cold and touching as a clear spring in the mountains. Tang Fenwu was in a daze for a moment, and a strange liking arose in his heart. He looked around at the children, his eyes filled with resentment and envy. The medicine immortal elder, whose martial arts are unparalleled in the world, has lived in seclusion for many years and never been born on the Cloud Mountain. When he went up the mountain, he hoped that the medicine immortal elder would have died as rumored, so it would be much easier for him to take revenge. The biggest difficulty lies in the snowy swamp where identity can be distinguished. The current situation, before he could experience the pain of heart and bone gouging, the biggest variable came before his eyes. If we really go with him, I'm afraid I might have become the enemy under this person's sword before avenging my family. With this in mind, he gritted his teeth tightly and said, "I." Before he could finish speaking, he realized that his throat was hoarse and he couldn't utter a word. He sank his knees and knelt heavily in front of the person. The next second, I kowtowed to the person like a marionette and bowed to the teacher. Poor. It's really pitiful. As tears streamed through the corners of my eyes, I was completely unaware and only felt pain in my heart. How can you shake a tree? How can you compare the lightness of a feather with Mount Taishan? He is like an ant, how can he seek revenge for his family? He chuckled at himself, afraid that he would soon go down to meet them. Chapter 3. Male God's Heart Record. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the microbiological merchant had done enough to show outsiders, the crane on the climbing cloud mountain rebuked the clouds and descended. He carried the person onto the crane's body, freeing him from confinement and saying, "It's called Shang Bai. If you feel bored on the mountain in the future, you can relax with it." Tang Fenwu turned his face and remained silent. Wei Xingshang turned his head and saw the tear marks on his face, which immediately made him feel novel. When he first met Tang Fenwu, his temperament was gentle and unyielding, and he had already been carved into a rough jade by himself, like a noble and proud lotus flower. And the young man in front of me, with a fiery exterior but soft interior, now when I cry, I truly feel like that newly bloomed pink rose. Do you think I humiliated you? Tang Fenwu glanced at him, and the tears hanging between his eyelashes couldn't be shed, making him just right to be pitied and loved. No, Master Yao Xian is unparalleled in the world. People in this world are eager for your position as a disciple, and I have no right to refuse. Upon hearing this, the microbiologist chuckled lightly and said, "Sharp teeth and sharp mouth. This has never changed." He lifted his mask and let the mountain breeze blow down his face, enjoying the moment of tranquility. "Believe it or not, I just want you to live." He met Tang Fenwu's eyes and noticed the embarrassment and annoyance on his face after losing consciousness. He leaned his face over and asked with a smile, "Is it good or bad?" Tang Fenwu's eyes dodged, but his ears and face turned red. He dodged back, and Wei Xingshang leaned closer to him and said, "Master, why didn't you answer?" Tang Fenwu was a bit angry. He was about to dodge and scold him, but he felt a surge of blood. He frowned and covered his heart. The next second, he let out a burst of blood. The playful expression of the microbiologist immediately dissipated, replaced by a heart full of worry. Tang Fengwu fainted and fell limply into his arms. He probed Tang Fengwu's breath and thought to himself that he might have knocked him out of anger. What a quack, trying to find patients without caring about their condition. Shang Bai flew quickly through the clouds and landed in front of Jianyun Palace. The microbiologist ran over the corridor holding a person headed straight for the hot spring behind the mountain. Before taking off his clothes, the Wei Xing Shang placed the person into the spring water. The misty mist enveloped the two of them. After exploring his internal breathing, the Wei Xing Shang used his energy to regulate his breathing. He was full of divine energy, but due to two evenly matched forces balancing and restraining him, his internal breathing was disrupted, to the point where he had just competed at the foot of the mountain and was suppressed by his spirit. At this moment, he finally couldn't hold on. After using the Weixing Shang Yingong to ease his internal breathing, he walked out of the hot spring and called out to the Shang Bai, who was hung with bottles and jars full of spiritual medicine and sent down the mountain. He is afraid that he overestimated the abilities of these people or underestimated the impact of the pressure he released on them. In short, this trip will ultimately be disrespectful to them. In the evening, Tang Fengwu finally woke up leisurely. Backlit by green bamboo, standing in the center of the house, forming a natural screen, passing through the green bamboo, the lingering smoke carrying the fragrance of tea drifted in front of him. Weixing Shang walked up to him in a black inner garment, holding a cup of tea in his hand. Tang Fengwu looked at him and grabbed his hand, instinctively shrinking. Weixing Shang gave him a faint glance, grabbed his wrist, gently pulled it, and placed it on his lap. He checked his pulse and said, "You're doing well." Then he picked up a teacup and handed it to Tang Fengwu with one hand, his gaze indicating, "Drink." Tang Fengwu's face was slightly pale. Weixing Shang trusted his medical skills and knew that he was not suffering from a serious illness, but rather had something else in his heart. "Are you the bloodline of the two races of humans and demons?" The bedding on the bed was suddenly grasped by one hand, and Wei Xing's face remained unchanged. He turned the palm of his other hand and placed the tea in his hand. After a series of movements, he stood up and walked towards the door without looking back. Tang Fengwu knew what kind of blood was flowing from his body in his previous life. What thoughts does he have? He doesn't care. The mission of the Crossing Bureau is just to play a specific role in the plane, making the story more complete. Besides, as long as Tang Fengwu doesn't die, everything else has nothing to do with him. As soon as the door was closed, Tang Fengwu immediately began to use his retreat energy. He was surprised to find that the internal breathing in the Divine Sea had already been orderly parallel at this time. For 18 years, he had been troubled by the internal breathing that held him in his body, and just now he was caught off guard by that person, but he couldn't break through. He picked up the tea by the bed, which was already a bit warm and cool. He sniffed it carefully and found that it was just an ordinary cup of tea, so he drank it. The aroma of tea was strong and mellow, filling his entire mouth with warmth. Tang Fengwu's eyes couldn't help but light up, and he licked his lips, feeling that the tea was extremely stunning. 2 or 3 steps past the green bamboo and stepped in front of the coffee table, but there was nothing left, only a note left on the table. The resolute and vigorous ink brush above reads, "1 lamp a day with 4 big characters." Tang Fengwu looked embarrassed. How did this person know he would still bring tea to drink? He stared blankly and turned back to the bed to practice martial arts. At dawn, the sky is slightly bright. Tang Fengwu opened his eyes and felt sticky all over his body, probably sweating from practicing martial arts last night. He remembered that when he arrived in the mountains yesterday, he entered a warm spring, which must have been a hot spring in the back mountain. He stepped out of the door and headed alone towards the back mountain. After cleaning his body, he walked towards his own house and passed by a house, only to smell the smell of food. He is a bit incredulous. Who is stealing food from the back mountain? Or is it that person cooking for themselves or that merchant eating for free? He wanted to step inside, but then remembered something. He turned around and returned to his room, took the wine gourd he had been carrying with him, and then returned to the house he had just passed by. He stood in front of the door and knocked. The door was shaken open by an internal force, and it was only then that Tang Funwu could see clearly the microbiological merchant inside the house eating food. The microbiologists saw him coming, put down the dishes, and asked, together. Not seen overnight, Tang Funwu was once again amazed by the face of Wei Xingshang. Although this person is domineering, he is still quite appropriate in some aspects. He followed the rules and bowed to his master before entering the room. The microbiologist handed him a pair of chopsticks. Tang Funwu hesitated and took it over. He had already passed the foundation building period, and eating ordinary food was actually not beneficial for him to practice martial arts. But he still sat down. For one thing, he had not eaten meat for a long time, so he was a bit envious. The second, Master, why don't you plan to hand me over to the immortal sect? Upon hearing his words, Wei Xingshang almost laughed. His previous words were all in vain. Are you deaf, or did I not express myself clearly? Tang Funwu didn't know what he wanted to return. You're not afraid, what would I do to harm the immortal sect? Wei Xingshang glanced at him and sneered contemptuously. Tang Funwu remained silent and picked up a chopstick of meat, burying his head in eating it. The microbiologist leaned back and saw a smile in his eyes as he ate, which he had not even noticed. He was thinking that Tang Funwu still had this appearance when he was young. Without a sense of security and inner sensitivity, but with a much weaker sense of defense than before. Unlike the wilting old fox many years later, it is much cuter than the old fox. After Tang Funwu finished pulling out the food from the bowl, Wei Xingshang suddenly put down his chopsticks heavily. Tang Funwu looked a bit confused as he lifted his eyes. He hadn't finished chewing the food in his mouth and looked stunned. You can eat too much. Tang Funwu silently swallowed the meat in his mouth and said. I don't have money. Chapter 4. Heartbeat Record 2.0. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If it weren't for you, I could have saved several days of food, said the microbiologist, pretending to be troubled and pressing his brow. Tang Funwu wiped the corner of his mouth and quickly stood up to bow to the Weisheng Trading Company, saying, Thank you very much for your love. I don't think I will repay you, so I can only go and practice to improve my internal strength. It won't make my master feel ashamed. He took a step back to walk, but his waist was once again bound. He shook his body in an attempt to break free, and the next second he was dragged back and flew away. He stumbled backwards and flipped over a table of utensils. In his panic, he suddenly fell into a warm embrace. Tang Funwu was shocked, so he was held by his left forearm and turned around in the arms of the man. He stared blankly at the handsome face in front of him, as if it were a masterpiece. He didn't feel humiliated for a moment, but instead, his whole body became hot. Wei Xingshang originally wanted to embarrass him, but how did he know that when he cast the spell, his mind was confused and he pulled the person into his arms. He was originally thinking about whether to explain, but when he saw the person in front of him with a face even redder than Shang Bai's head, he suddenly lost interest in explaining. He raised his hand and hooked the person's chin, laughing, I remember this cooked food didn't have the effect of enhancing internal power. You're bursting with qi and blood, why is that? Tang Funwu's eyes trembled uncontrollably, and he moved his lips, only uttering 4 words one by one. Are you humiliating me? This is the first time that Wei Xingshang has seen Tang Funwu's face up close. In his previous life, he only remembered the way he smiled, hazy in his wilting. Now upon closer inspection, his eyebrows and eyes are round and blunt, his nose is slender and straight, and there are still lip beads on his lips, which are very eye-catching. Even the waist is extremely thin and muscular. But compared to the previous life, it has much more blood color. Tang Fengwu stood up from Wei Xingshang, with a face full of embarrassment and anger exclusive to the youth. Wei Xingshang regained his senses and also stood up with him. He clapped his hands and said, "Since we don't have any grain left, we'll have to go down the mountain to buy. Would Fengwu be willing to join me?" Tang Fengwu turned around in anger and said, "I won't go." The microbiologist picked up the wine gourd on the table and weighed it in his hand, saying, "My disciple disobeyed my master. Do you know the sin?" Tang Fengwu took a deep breath, turned around and gritted his teeth to look at him. "What should you do?" The microbiologist opened the lid and took a sip, tasted it, and commented, "This wine is good. Did you brew it yourself?" Tang Fengwu snatched the gourd and said, "It's none of your business." Wei Xingshang's hand was empty, and he fell down, looking at the teasing little Tang Fengwu with a smile in his eyes. "I helped you through the danger, but I didn't intend to hand you over to the immortal family. If you don't know how to repay your kindness, it's just that you are still so hostile towards me." He spoke in this way, showing a lonely expression. "I have been pure on this mountain for hundreds of years, and I don't know how to get along with people. If you feel offended, then I apologize to you." Watching the Wei Xingshang dynasty bend down to apologize, Tang Fengwu stumbled back a step. Wei Xingshang straightened up and lifted his eyelids to look at him. He found that his face was only flushed and no longer angry. He tentatively asked, "Fengwu, would you like to go with me? The Baishui town at the foot of Shu Mountain is bustling with people. Although it is not as exquisite in terms of food and clothing as other places in the capital, it is also the place that can most stimulate the taste buds and playfulness of ordinary people." The two disguised themselves and used magic to make it difficult for people to see their true appearance. Walking leisurely in this place filled with the smell of human smoke, Tang Fengwu felt as if he had passed away. He followed behind the microbiologist, feeling disillusioned as he looked at the meat shop, reluctant to part ways, buying one and then another. Is this the legendary medicine immortal who doesn't eat human fireworks and is aloof and aloof? Not only does he yearn for the mortal world, but his temperament is also frivolous and promiscuous, just pretending to be in front of everyone. The microbiologist clenched onto the ring filled with ingredients and squeezed out of the crowd to find Tang Fengwu's whereabouts. Looking at him standing alone not far away, standing in a dignified manner, he just seemed a bit pitiful. He approached and wanted to knock his head, but Tang Fengwu dodged him with agility and said expressionlessly, "Master, do you have anything else to prepare?" I didn't hit the round head and my fingertips rubbed against his hair. The microbiologist pinched his fingers and pointed in the direction of the ready-to-wear shop, saying, "I'll make you some clothes." Each major sect on Mount Shu has their own school uniforms. In the past, Panyan Mountain was given a cold and unadorned white outfit, which was selected by various sections. The workmanship was rough, and micro-merchants thought it was not suitable at the time, and now even more so. White is too plain, occasionally wearing it can make people's eyes clean, but he wants to see more bright colors on Tang Fengwu's body. Before entering the ready-to-wear shop, Tang Fengwu couldn't see any special expression on his face. As soon as those dazzling fabrics were placed in front of him, there was an indescribable joy in his eyes. Tang Fengwu glanced at Wei Xingshang and asked, "Let me choose for myself." The microbiologist raised an eyebrow and said, "My good brother, pick as many as he wants." Tang Fengwu sneered at his attitude, and when his attention turned back to the exquisite fabrics, he became overjoyed. The owner of the ready-to-wear shop tailored Tang Fengwu's clothes, and the owner's wife stood on the side praising, "The younger brother of the official is really impressive and has an extraordinary demeanor. He has quite your style, official." The Wei Xingshang nodded in a serious manner, but Tang Fengwu ignored him and his gaze lingered on the emerald green and black silk brocades. The microbiologist walked over and pointed to him, asking, "These two?" Tang Fengwu said with a hint of cunning and reserved demeanor, "It's also possible." The microbiologist ordered a few more high-quality materials, and the shopkeeper rushed forward to pick them. She couldn't help but smile and said, okay, official. I'll write it down for you right now. How many pictures will I choose for your brother over here? At this moment, Tang Fengwu also measured himself and walked towards him. Wei Xingshang hugged half of his shoulder and said, "Good brother." Tang Fengwu patted his hand away and furrowed his delicate eyebrows, saying, "Don't move your manual feet." As Wei Xingshang walked forward, he raised his hand and pinched his earlobe, then immediately put it down. Tang Fengwu seemed unaware and walked directly to the landlady to select patterns. Wei Xingshang watched as his red ear tips gradually turned red, and he walked forward with a smile on his face. Tang Fengwu had excellent eyesight and selected designs that he admired. He even drew designs for the red brocade. I believe this child used to be from a wealthy family, but his family declined and he fell to this point. Tang Fengwu turned around and bumped into the pitiful eyes of Wei Xingshang. He was stunned for a few seconds and cursed, "I'm sick. Boss, please try to make these bodies as quickly as possible." The microbiologist put down the deposit, and the boss happily accepted it, promising, "It must be." The two of them walked out of the ready-to-wear store, the sun shining brightly, and couldn't help but feel dazzling. "Let's go to the restaurant to avoid the scorching sun." Tang Fengwu smiled and said, "If you want to eat, just eat. You have so many excuses." Chapter 5. Tangmen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey everyone, have you heard about it? The fairy above appeared yesterday. Who is that? Hey, who else can it be? That expert with profound magical power and corpses scattered everywhere in a blink of an eye. Oh, I know. It's that kind of medicinal fairy climbing the Cloud Mountain. Climbing Cloud Mountain. Is there really a fairy there? I think it's a dangerous forbidden area. Use a fairy's name to scare us ordinary people not to let us in. Harm, this has been going on for hundreds of years, but we have never seen it before. It's normal not to believe it. I said, is he really so powerful? That's right, after all, they have lived for hundreds of years. How many people in this world who seek immortality can live for so long? So how did he come out yesterday, and didn't see any celestial anomalies? What kind of people do you think immortals are? They always come and go freely like walking on a flat ground. If there were such a big battle, wouldn't they feel uncomfortable? By the way, I heard what my relative on the Shu Mountain said. As soon as this medicine immortal came out, everyone dared not move. The immortal descended and was majestic across the 9 continents. All the creatures in the world gathered in response, all bowing and whispering. Mountains and rivers trembled for it. Ha ha ha, Lao Lu, is this about coming and going freely, or is it about awe-inspiring the world? What do you know? This immortal appears with whatever posture he wants. But I've heard that this immortal brought someone up when he came down the mountain. Who? I heard that I brought a disciple to worship the mountain. The crowd sighed faintly and said, if I were also favored by this immortal, I would have no worries about food and clothing for my whole life. As a cup of hot tea entered, Tang Fengwu put down his cup. Don't like it. Tang Fengwu shook his head and opened his hand to the Weisheng merchant, and a few ingots of silver fell into his hands. He called the shop assistant and gave him a piece of broken silver. Second brother, can you help me pour a pot of wine? The shopkeeper happily carried a gourd and went to fetch wine. Wei Xingshang leaned forward and asked him, why do you call him brother but not me? Tang Fengwu glanced at him and said, Master, calling him that way is really disrespectful. The microbiologist choked and touched his nose. Tang Fengwu picked up the tea cup and leaned it close to his mouth, thinking to himself, besides, you have the face to call me brother in your hundreds. I took a shallow sip, feeling that it was not tasty, and then put down the tea. The person at the table next to him spoke and then talked about Shu Mountain. Who will be the leader of the competition for admission to the hospital outside Shushan? I remember the royal family also came. The third prince's shadow tassel, I'll bet on him. Hey, I was originally very optimistic about that Zhou Ran. It would be great if the medicine immortal had collected it from him. Yeah, that's the first place in the outer courtyard competition. What's the name of the disciple who was taken away by the medicine immortal? I don't know. Call Tang Fengwu. Why does it sound a bit familiar? Is it a familiar surname? Our Shu Shan Xiao Tang family is closest to the Tang family, which flourished for a while decades ago. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell silent in agreement. After a long time, someone finally spoke up, the Tang clan that was destroyed a few years ago. No one responded, but it can also be considered as default. What's the point of mentioning this? It's unlucky. If it weren't for them, there wouldn't have been any demonic cultivators infiltrating the Central Plains to do evil. Someone slammed the table heavily and drank, Tang clan deserves to be destroyed. These remnants of the demon clan still want to infiltrate the Central Plains and replace them. I just don't know where the secret techniques and ancient books of that day and night pavilion went. It must have been burned down by them themselves. After all, they are all things that harm people and cause harm. After a long time, someone suggested going to the gambling house to bet on the leader of this year's Shushan sword trial. Everyone was enthusiastic and soon left in a grand manner. The waiter finished making the wine and placed the wine gourd on the tables of the two guests. He was about to speak, but he noticed that the two of them were now shrouded in a dark cloud above his head, making him hesitant to speak and hastily left. The microbiologist placed chopsticks by the bowl and casually took the wine gourd. Before he could get it, the wine gourd was snatched away by a green onion with a white wrist. The next moment, the pot of wine was consumed by Tang Fengwu's cow, or if he drank too quickly, Tang Fengwu suddenly coughed. Wei Xingshang followed his back and placed his other hand on his wrist, his face suddenly changing. He suddenly struck Tang Fengwu's neck with a knife, picked up the unconscious person and rushed to climb the cloud mountain in front of everyone. Shang Bai received the letter halfway and caught the two in mid-air with a roar. It looked up and called out, "Master, what's wrong with him?" Wei Xingshang held him in his arms with concern and said, "He was so angry that I knocked him unconscious in my eagerness. There was still a mouthful of blood in his throat that I hadn't vomited." He raised his hand and delivered internal energy to Tang Fengwu's body. The blood stasis in his mouth dissipated like a murmuring stream, slowly flowing and dispersing from the corner of his mouth, forming red twisted tree roots. Wei Xingshang suddenly felt a little flustered, and the concretization of life came so suddenly. He held it on Tang Fengwu's cheek, gathering sand to form a tower, and then passed away from his fingertips. Just like Tang Fengwu's destiny. I couldn't save him in my previous life, nor can I in this life. Ling Quan. Go to Ling Quan. Shang Bai was like an arrow piercing through the clouds, causing the disciples of Shu Mountain to stop and look at each other. Is this the mount of the medicine immortal? Wei Xingshang carefully placed it into the Ling Quan, and the red color immediately fainted and died, becoming a magnificent painting of Zhu Dan. His hands also trembled, as if Tang Fengwu had absorbed his own energy just when he was using his skills. He probed into Tang Fengwu's divine sea and almost fell into the pool without strength. Impossible, obviously, you still lived for many years in your previous life. He trembled as he held Tang Fengwu's unconscious face, which was pale, soft, yet devoid of any vitality. The mist around him rose, but there was no sign of any warming up in his body. His body gradually stiffened, and frost even froze on his eyelashes. He continuously transmitted his internal energy into Tang Fengwu's body, but Shanhai slowly swallowed this energy, and he clearly realized that he was gradually drying up. Wow! Tang Fengwu's hand suddenly drooped, and his round head, combed with hair, crashed into his arms without warning. The microbiologist stopped the action of delivering internal forces. Dead. He lowered his head and looked at Tang Fengwu's quiet face. In fact, Xiao Tang Fengwu is very well behaved, but if his temperament has been honed in a few years, he will grow a wide range of branches. Is the heart twitching because it still hasn't been able to save a patient's life? It's really fresh. I haven't encountered this kind of situation in many years, or even hundreds of years. The blood at the corner of Tang Fengwu's mouth was shaken open by a tear. Chapter 60,000. Fans suffer at Waterloo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone has come. Wei Shang stored Tang Fengwu in an ice coffin, nourishing him with his internal energy every day. Now, it seems that his face is even more rosy and healthy than the day he died. This world is too dull, he went down the mountain, thinking of finishing everything he had not yet accomplished. He didn't cover his face and went straight down the mountain to the most upscale ready-to-wear shop in Baishui town. He stopped in front of the door for a moment this time and remembered the name of the ready-to-wear shop. Baishui Ready-to-Wear. Okay, Wei Shang smiled, it turned out to be such a simple name. Shop owner, this is my contract. The boss and his wife looked at the contract with some disbelief, and then carefully looked at the micro-business from beginning to end. The door of the white water garment was filled with people standing there, poking inside like a queen. The microbiologist took the clothes and walked to the door. Suddenly, Wu Yangyang and a group of people made way. As he was about to step out of the door, he suddenly thought of something and stopped with a faint smile, saying to the crowd, I am a micro-merchant from Panyan Mountain. The downfall of the Tang clan has other secrets. I hope you don't believe rumors and spread them. After explaining this sentence, he rode the crane back to Panyan Mountain and tidied up everything. Before leaving, he sat next to the ice coffin and finally glanced at Tang Fengwu's face. The last trace of internal strength could not be sustained, and the only medicinal fairy in the sky and earth no longer existed. The opening time of the crossing warehouse was earlier than Zhang Wanting had imagined. He stood in front of the crossing warehouse and watched as Wei Shang slowly sat up. He couldn't help but be stunned for a moment and said, Wei Sheng, you cried. The microbiologist wiped his face and chuckled lightly, yes. Are you going to rest now? He stepped out of the crossing warehouse with his long legs and said, Brother Zhang, I need to go see Minister Tian. Zhang Wanting still has a job and is not convenient to accompany him, but he is still puzzled and itchy. He thinks that during this period, the number of times Wei Shang has gone to see Tianyu has been too frequent. Is it difficult for Tianyu to really have a scene? Just as Wei Sheng was about to step out, Zhang Wanting saw that the data was somewhat incorrect and quickly stopped him, saying, by the way, Wei Sheng, there is still a risk in this kind of world-line backtracking. The butterfly effect is too strong, and the protagonist line will collapse directly. Next time, you still need to think twice. After silently listening to the advice, the microbiologist nodded and said, okay, I understand. Watching the silhouette of the microbiologist gradually disappear, Zhang Wanting buttoned his head, it was really strange. I can't say it's strange, but it's just strange. When Wei Shang arrived at her office door, Tianyu was watching the scene of the medicine immortal collecting the body for her disciple. She was crying uncontrollably, not even realizing that she had reached her territory. The door was lightly slammed, and Tianyu casually wiped off his nose with a tissue and said, please come in. But her attention is still stuck in the world plane. Wei Shang stared at her intently and glanced at Tang Fengwu's lifeless body. Tianyu heard some commotion and quickly noticed that it was Wei Shang. He panicked and turned off the backtracking video. Noah angrily asked, Wei Sheng brother, how did you come? Without a response, Wei Shang immediately made up for it and said, I didn't mean to do this, it's just that your destiny in your past and present lives is really too bumpy. I can't help but cut it out. Can I sit down? Tianyu nodded like a puppy. The microbiologist sat at Tianyu's desk and said, I didn't stop you from uploading my clips. You have this heart, so I should feel honored. Tianyu's face was about to burst into laughter as he spoke. I saw the microbiologist take out a reagent tube from his pocket, which contained fresh blood. Tian Yu was very knowledgeable and immediately guessed, this is Fenwu's blood, right? Do you think so? The microbiologist nodded and said, please help me check if there is any information about him in the database. I suspect he is an internal staff member, otherwise it wouldn't have caused such a serious impact on the world line. When Tian Yu heard about this, it was not a small matter. This was the first time that the microbiological business asked her to find someone, so she hurriedly took over the reagent tube and entrusted the task to herself. After chatting a few more words, Wei Xingshang returned to the Star Palace, which was his resting place after leaving the mission world. In fact, he doesn't know if Tang Fenwu is a staff member. Even if not, it would be good if someone could trace his reincarnation. It was just a chance encounter, and Wei Xingshang believed that the level of attention and emotional attachment to him could be considered rare. After all, he is a person he couldn't save, perhaps just holding a hint of guilt and wanting to see him live in this world again. After staying in the Star Palace for half a day, he put the souvenirs he brought back from the previous world into the storage cabinet. This time, the barren space suddenly becomes lively. After organizing these, he contacted Zhang Wantang to start the next world plane. As soon as the microbiologist opened his eyes, a red liquid rushed towards him, leaving him nowhere to hide. Red wine soaked the hair in front of the forehead, dripped down the bridge of the nose, onto the snow-white shirt, and then drowned his body, hiding under a navy blue suit. The waiter hurriedly handed over a square towel, and the microbiologist took it to wipe off the stains on his face before looking up at the girl who poured red wine at him. The girl's eyes turned red and she glared angrily, I can't agree to your dirty request. After uttering these harsh words, the girl in a waiter's uniform angrily left on the smooth marble floor. Many aristocratic young masters and ladies around saw this scene and came to ask for comfort. They smiled politely and didn't say much. He forgot to accept the world line script. A young man who looked like his friend took him to find an empty room to change clothes. On the way, he told him why he had to hang himself from a tree. The girl named Angshu was not a fuel-efficient lamp. There are countless good girls in this world, but with such conditions as you, are you still worried about not being able to catch up? She also said that the girl named Anshu has no taste and even looks down on the young master Weisheng, giving her face as Wei Xingshang was distracted from reading the script and listening to him speak. He realized that the young man beside him, named Zhou Heching, was his good friend. The two of them arrived at the room, and the waiter happened to deliver the clothes. Anshu is only 18 years old, what tricks can he have? Wei Xingshang advised him with a good temper. Upon hearing this, Zhou Qinghe couldn't help but howl up to the sky and say, Weisheng, Weisheng. You have really been captivated by that woman. I say she has become a bit innocent, which makes you feel novel. Don't you say she is innocent, isn't this kind of little girl just to pick on a young master like you? Otherwise, we'll invite her out for a small drink. Why is she so reactive? It's not to provoke your rebellious mentality and be attracted to her. Chapter 7. Old Cows and Young Grass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wei Xingshang smiled without hesitation. As soon as he took off his wet and sticky shirt, he heard a cold breath coming from behind. He turned his head to look, and Zhou Qinghe actually wanted to get started. He took 2 steps back and said, Didn't you? Zhou Qinghe said with an obsequious smile, Who doesn't want to have it? Master Weisheng, we are all men. Let me feel what's wrong. I'll tell you why I've never seen you dressed like an old fogey. It's not boiled-sliced cold chicken for nothing, it's just pure grumbling. The microbiologist threw the dirty shirt over and smiled, Get lost. That week, Qinghe took it and said, How much do you think I'll get for auctioning it off? The microbiologist couldn't bear it and rolled his eyes, saying, You little brat still thinks a lot. He put on his clothes and was about to walk outside the door. Zhou Qinghe threw his shirt onto the bed and quickly chased after him, saying, What little brat? I'm on the 2nd day of February, and you're on the 8th day of March. According to the rules, you still have to call me brother. Wei Xingshang looked at him with a skeptical expression on his face. Zhou Qinghe touched his nose with a guilty expression and whispered, although I am from the lunar calendar and you are from the new calendar. I have always been celebrating the lunar birthday. It's your new calendar birthday. Can I call you, younger brother? The microbiologist let out a deep sigh and quickened his pace of going out. Zhou Qinghe quickly forgot about his previous squat and walked behind him, speaking confidently, but it's okay, I won't see that woman again soon. Anyway, you're going abroad, and you won't see any kind of woman when you go abroad. I'm afraid you'll soon miss the bed and forget all about this innocent girl. Going abroad? Asked the microbiologist, what goes abroad? Zhou Qinghe said in a daze, don't you know? After the college entrance examination is over, your father will send you abroad. Who did you hear? Zhou Qinghe scratched his head and said, hey, it's really strange. This was what your dad and my dad said. The other day when the two families were having dinner and you went to the bathroom, they talked about it. I thought you knew it too. He didn't think it was a big deal, so he patted the shoulder of the micro-business and smiled, it's okay. I will definitely come to play with you when I go to Y country. Anyway, with me by your side, I'm not afraid of loneliness, right? Look at you, you can't hit a fart like this, only I won't mind you. The job of Wei Xingshang is usually to play a role and improve the storyline. Now he only knows that the female lead is called Anshu, and the male lead is his younger brother, Wei Xingyuan. The work of the White Moonlight Department only needs to live until the end of the storyline in the mission world. He just saw that Anshu's impression of him must have been extremely bad, perhaps a bit off the storyline. At least don't let Anshu have a bad impression of him. What day is it today? Sunday, sigh, I have to go to that rundown school again tomorrow. The microbiologist nodded and said, that's all for today. I'll leave first. Zhou Qinghe thought that someone had poured wine on him and lost interest, so he said, then you go first and tell me when you go home. The microbiologist waved his hand to indicate that he heard. He returned to the blue water garden and when he entered the living room, he heard the soft sobs of the girl and the soft comforting voices of the boy. He paused in his footsteps, thinking to himself that it might not be Anshu and Wei Xingyuan. Just as he was thinking about it, the two of them who came downstairs to talk to each other looked up and froze in place again. One person is his father in this world, Wei Xingyu, while the young man walking beside him, dressed in suits and shoes, with graceful and courteous gestures. What surprised the merchant was not his bearing, but his face. He was exactly the same as Tang Fengwu. At this moment, the young man also noticed his burning gaze. When he looked at Wei Xingshang, there was a fleeting amazement in his eyes, and then he became polite, nodding to him with a light smile. Ah Shang, why did you even come back? The two people in the living room heard Wei Xingyu say so, and surprisingly, they also fell silent at the same time. The girl's gaze towards him was quite resentful. Wei Xingyuan glanced at him, as if wanting to greet him with a smile, but also considering Anshu's mood, his guilty eyes flowed between the two. At this moment, Wei Xingyu said again, by the way, I just wanted to tell you that this is Tang Fengwu, the person in charge of Xingyao in Y country. I plan to let you study abroad after the college entrance examination is over. It's just right, I can let your brother Fengwu take care of you. Fengwu, brother. The eyes of the microbiologist were fixed on Tang Fengwu's face. Wei Xingyu coughed and said, don't blame Dad. Dad has his own decision and won't harm you. He said this and gestured with his eyes not to embarrass Wei Xingshang. Tang Fengwu had a stone hanging in his heart, afraid that this young master would be too difficult to get along with and that it would not be easy to live in Y country. Unexpectedly, the young master suddenly laughed strangely, his eyes as if he was about to peel off his skin and cramp, and even his hands involuntarily trembled. Wei Xingshang's heart was quite complicated, but his smile remained warm. I have no objection, Brother Fenwu is leaving now. Ah. Tang Fenwu awkwardly smiled and said, isn't it going to be a long time? I need to go back and prepare. Besides, it's already late, so I won't disturb your rest. After Tang Fenwu finished speaking, he was about to bid farewell. Wei Xingshang took a step on the right and blocked his way. His face, which was full of killing power, seemed to be smiling, then I'll see him off. The evening breeze brought a hint of coolness, and after Tang Fenwu closed the car door, the window was lightly tapped by a hand with distinct joints. Lowering the car window, those beautiful eyes with light-colored pupils looked at him with a smile and said, Brother, I don't know your contact information yet. Upon hearing this, Tang Fenwu raised his eyebrows and handed over his phone with a proper fake smile. My younger brother still has classes tomorrow, so we need to rest early, he said. The microbiologist smiled and dialed his phone number, returning it to Tang Fenwu. Okay, thank you, brother, he said, seeing someone standing outside the door. As if to watch him leave, Tang Fenwu pursed his lips and smiled before driving away. Tang Fenwu felt a bit uneasy in his heart. He always felt that there was something profound in the young master's expression. If it was just a stubborn personality, when he arrived in Y country, he would just need to be distracted to take care of him. However, this face-to-face encounter made him feel that things were not as simple as he thought. He pinched his brows. The work pressure has been quite high these days, maybe he's feeling nervous. Returning to the apartment, he took a shower after dealing with a lot of work tasks, took medicine, and only then did he find a new friend application on WeChat while lying in bed. He opened it and saw that it was indeed sent by the young master. As soon as he agreed, the microbiologist over there immediately sent him a message. Brother, are you still up so late? He paused his fingertips and sent a smiling emoji along with it. It's normal for him to have a generation gap with young people now, and it shouldn't be a big deal for him to get angry. Brother hasn't replied to my message, I'm worried about him. The phone immediately became like a hot potato, and he hesitated, not knowing what to say. He couldn't think of how the microbiologist could say such cheesy words with such a face. He decided to turn off his phone and treat him as if he was asleep. Just before the phone went black, a message was sent from the microbiome company. Tang Fenwu didn't see clearly. He pursed his lips and engaged in a battle between heaven and man. In the end, driven by curiosity, he clicked on WeChat. Good night, brother. He breathed a sigh of relief and replied, good night. Chapter 8. Tender Guide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wei Xingshang went downstairs to drink water, while Wei Xingyuan gently comforted Anshu's emotions. Anshu cried and hiccuped to confide in Wei Xingyuan. He vaguely heard Wei Xingyuan speaking for him, saying, his brother must not be that kind of person. Don't misunderstand. Wei Xingshang walked into the living room and looked at the little mandarin ducks. Ah Yuan, why don't you take this sister home? Upon hearing this, Anshu was like a startled chick, just as he successfully called Wei Xingyuan. He pulled the person into his arms and said, Shu's mother is sick and living in the hospital. She has nowhere to live. Can't I take her in? What a pity. Anshumi's eyes stood upright and she angrily said, don't you have to pity me? Wei Xingshang smiled at her and said, you're just pitiful. With such a big weapon, Anshu couldn't help but laugh at her. Anshu forgot to be angry for a moment, feeling that her face must have turned red. Wei Xingyuan sounded an alarm in his heart, flipping her head and casually saying something to divert her attention. The second day. Before dawn, the three of them got into the car and were escorted by the driver to school. Still some distance away from the school gate, Anshu argued to get off the car and walk over. As a result, Wei Xingyuan argued with her for a while. Wei Xingshang was too lazy to listen, so he got off the car and walked to the other side to open the car door, pulling the two of them off the car. Anshu and Wei Xingyuan looked bewildered as Wei Xingshang returned to the car and lowered the window. Get out of here. Then he said to the driver, "Lao Zhang, let's go. Without two people by my side, you and I felt a lot cleaner in my ears." At the end of class, there was always a group of people around him who couldn't be separated, from Tiannan to Hebei, and it wasn't until the bell rang that they dispersed. The microbiologist listened to the class in a bored manner for a while, then took out his phone and sent a message to Tang Fengwu. "Microbiologist. What are you doing?" Tang Fengwu should have been busy. It was almost time for class before he replied to him. "We were in a meeting just now, smiling. Wei Xingshang smiled at the corner of his mouth and poked the smiling face a few times with his fingers. "Micro business. Pick me up from school at 12 o'clock. I have work at noon, so I won't go home." "Is Uncle Zhang busy today?" The microbiologist sent a message to Zhang Shu and then pressed to turn off the screen. Finally, after school was over, he took a taxi to the school gate and headed straight for Xinyao Group. The front desk recognized his face, and the microbiologist asked Tang Fengwu about his office before taking the elevator upstairs. Tang Fengwu was not in the office, so the microbiologist sat on the sofa waiting for him. The smell in this office is the same as that of Tang Fengwu. It is soft and cold. If it was not for the smell of his previous life, he would never leave him. He thought he had sprayed some perfume. There are many green plants placed by the window and on the table, which are also beautiful, indicating that Tang Fengwu takes good care of them in his daily life. As soon as Tang Fengwu walked into the office, he saw a handsome and extraordinary young man lying lazily on the sofa with his legs crossed, with a high school textbook lying between his legs. The pages of the book fluttered between him, giving off an indescribable feeling. Suddenly, those eyes deep enough to drown looked at him, with a smile in them. The long and thick eyelashes were like a weapon he used to play with people's hearts. "I'm back." The familiar tone instantly shattered his guard and made Tang Fengwu inexplicably nervous for a moment. He quietly tidied up his suit and jacket, took out a picture of elders showing concern for their younger generation, and pretended to be calm as he walked to his desk and sat down. "Why did you come over? Have you eaten yet?" Wei Xingshang put his physics textbook back in his backpack and casually held an office chair, sitting opposite Tang Fengwu. He raised his hand and placed his right hand on the mouse. The microbiologist keenly felt a slight tremble in his hand, and his eyes staring at the computer seemed lifeless. He stuttered and said, "Yes, what's up?" At this moment, Tang Fengwu was at war with heaven and man in his heart. He had excellent professional abilities and was blessed by his uncle. He had just graduated and was interned at Xinyao. Later, with good abilities, he was promoted to such a position in a short period of time. He works diligently to showcase his grand vision and not disappoint the appreciation and support of his uncle and chairman. He is honest and upright, and can be considered a good dancer at the drinking party. He never touches yellow, gambling, or drugs. The longer he goes on, the more he feels that his future is bright. At first, the chairman entrusted him to take care of the young master, thinking that it was not important to allocate a little bit of energy to work. But now the chairman said that the young master has a cold temperament and doesn't like to get close to people. If they really spread something out, wouldn't he be unable to argue with anyone if he tells outsiders that it was the young master who seduced him? Will others believe him? Not right. He doesn't like men, why would he be seduced by this child? No. What is he laughing at? Why is he staring at me and laughing? I'll go. Oh my goodness, doesn't he dislike me and want to drag me down? He thinks I'm threatening his position, right? It must be like this. Tang Fengwu's pupils were trembling incessantly, and his hands were secretly trying to pull them back. But at that moment, the microbiologist suddenly withdrew his hand and leaned back into the chair. "Brother, you still have the habit of exercising." This is a declarative sentence. Although Tang Fengwu is often said to have a good physique, when Wei Xingshang mentioned it, it made him feel somewhat helpless. He can't laugh anymore. Yes, I will go to the gym when I have time. The microbiologist nodded and said, it's pretty good. Great. What's good? Tang Fenwu unconsciously clenched the mouse. Staying up late at night is a third of the poison in medicine. After saying these words, the young man stood up and went to the sofa, picked up his backpack and threw it on his shoulder. He said goodbye to him lightly, let's go, brother. The office remained silent for almost half an hour, during which there was neither the sound of flipping pages nor the sound of mouse clicks. His grandmother's. Tang Fengwu's fists have hardened, what does this child mean? Provoking him with the power of beauty. He suddenly lay back, feeling a sense of injustice in his heart. He came to work at Xingyao, not to play politics with his children. Why should he suffer from this crime when he is still young? But the microbiome is really beautiful. The office door was knocked on again, and Tang Fengwu sat up and said calmly, come in. Chenmi saw that Tang Fengwu had been working all along and advised, Mr. Tang, the work in Country Y has been done well. Can we take a break for the next few days? Tang Fengwu stared intently at the screen and nodded perfunctorily, what's up? Oh, while you were in a meeting just now, your uncle called and asked you to go to the chairman's house for dinner tonight. Okay, is there anything else? Su Dong also said, let me ask you to choose gifts from the two young masters. The main purpose of this dinner is for you to get to know the young master. Tang Fengwu knocked on the computer until it crackled and took some time to say, okay, I understand. If there's nothing else, go ahead and get busy first. Chenmi remained silent for a few seconds with concern, and finally added, Mr. Tang. Rest more. Chapter 9. Baiting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After school in the afternoon, Wei Xingshang had not yet seen the other two Uncle Zhang before he had to drive. Where have they gone? Heir Xiao and Miss and Shu went to the hospital this afternoon, saying that after picking up the young master, they could go and pick them up. Okay. The microbiologist responded and asked again, what disease is Auntie suffering from? As soon as the words were spoken, a small electric current flashed through the mind of the microbiologist, and a voice rang out. Warning! Warning! Please do not interfere with the survival index of key personnel. Microorganisms feel that warning lights are lit up in front of them, flickering like life-threatening lights. Even if they close their eyes, they can still move in their minds, exaggerated to the point where the world is threatened by red and blue light. What consequences will there be? Will they die young like Feng Wu? Xiao. What are you talking about, young master? The microbiologist opened his eyes and looked out the window, where have you been? Uncle Zhang withdrew his gaze from the rearview mirror and said, we'll be at the hospital in 5 minutes. So fast. Micro-business thinking. It's a half-hour drive from school to the hospital, which means the mischievous broken light flickered in front of him for more than 20 minutes. Uncle Zhang asked, young master, do you want to go down and take a look? Wei Xingshang quietly looked out the window, and the figures of Wei Xingyuan and Enshu gradually became clear in front of him. He turned his head and breathed a sigh of relief, no need, they're here. Wei Xingyuan sat in the back seat, looking uninterested. Seeing Wei Xingshang also in the car, he asked lazily, brother, why did you come too? He invited Uncle Zhang to come to the hospital, and asking such a question would be like adding insult to injury. The microbiologist was too lazy to pay attention to his nonsense. Along the way, Wei Xingyuan's eyes hardly looked straight ahead, with a worried expression on his face. His gaze shifted back and forth in 3 directions. Enshu, hands, Enshu, and feet. The microbiologist tentatively asked in his mind, why didn't I give a warning when I used to play the role of a doctor treating and saving people? There was no voice to answer his question, but he also vaguely guessed that it might be due to a mismatch in character design or the plot arrangement, and he should have cured the life of that key character. He originally intended to comfort that birth, aging, illness, and death are human occurrences, but it seems that he has no stance. In 100 years of life, the most powerless thing is to save a life that does not belong to oneself. You may feel regretful, but you will realize soberly that this is not something you can achieve through your own efforts. In the evening, when he saw Tang Funwu at the banquet, he remembered the death of this person in his previous life. His 7 orifices bled to death, and even though he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he couldn't stop the blood flowing out of this person, as if mocking him. Wei Xingyuban looked up and knocked on the table, saying, "What's wrong with the 3 of you? After arguing, come back and show me your face, right?" Su Dong smiled kindly and advised, "The children are still young, maybe the pressure of studying is too heavy, and they will have to accompany us to eat when they return home. It's also Uncle Su who didn't think of this and apologized to you." The microbiologist poured a full glass of wine and looked apologetically at the smiling fox, saying, "I dare not dare Uncle Su. I neglected you and Brother Funwu today. I apologize on my behalf." The 2 of them tried to buck each other a few times before Wei Xingyu's expression finally eased. After drinking at the Weixing merchant and sitting down, he listened to the Weixing emperor's words and said, "Old Su, I really like your Funwu. He looks gentle when people are not arrogant or irritable. I don't know how many young girls in the company miss him, ahaha." Su Dong. "Hey, in my family, my favorite younger generation is Xiao Tang. He's not even young and doesn't even have a girlfriend." The microbiologist lifted his eyelids and glanced at Tang Funwu, who pursed his lips, lowered his eyebrows, and smiled shyly. He didn't mind at all, but he was very excited to hear those 2 old men talk to him about marriage. At this moment, the shy and coquettish person suddenly looked up in his direction, and Wei Xingshang couldn't dodge, his gaze as if it were fixed on Tang Funwu. Tang Funwu's glance did not linger for too long. He casually raised his eyebrows and quickly returned to the 2 of them chatting at the banquet. With a straight back and a shy smile, like a well-behaved baby. Feeling electrocuted in the heart. The microbiologist lowered his head and smiled low. He rubbed his hair randomly, stood up, and secretly patted Wei Xingyuan with his right hand, who was full but dared not leave. "Dad, Uncle, Brother Funwu, we have finished eating, you guys eat slowly." Wei Xingyu waved his hand. As Wei Xingshang was about to leave, Su Dong stopped him and said, "Hey, Xiaoshang, wait." Wei Xingshang turned around and heard Su Dong say, "You're almost on National Day too, aren't you? This little Tang is only busy with work all day long. Why don't you 2 take advantage of National Day and visit the resort in the South China Sea for a few days? It's just to enhance our relationship, and we're not afraid that you won't get used to getting along in Y country next year." Tang Funwu also stood up at the right time and handed him one hand. "Brother, I'll take care of you more from now on. Be more refined, be more outspoken." The microbiologist pinched his fingertips, his nails turning pink, and his body must be very healthy. "Take good care of yourself." As he walked out of the restaurant, Wei Xingyuan pulled the Weixing merchant into the garden and immediately got to the point. "Brother, can you give me some money? Anshu's mother is seriously ill, and she owes 3 million to treat her aunt's illness. She is homeless, and I want to help her." After listening to his description, the microbiologist paused for a moment and stuffed the card he had just wanted to withdraw back into his pocket. "How did you know so clearly? He told you himself." Upon hearing his malicious speculation, Wei Xingyuan's white lotus was immediately embarrassed and angry. How could it be? "Brother, you don't need to think about Anshu, a stubborn person. Can you tell me the truth? When I went to her temporary rental place to find her, she happened to be absent. I only found out when I met a thug who came to collect debts. Can you stop thinking about her so much?" Wei Xingshang leaned aside and stared quietly at the person, his eyes filled with foolishness. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Are we brothers? Why don't you look like a brother at all?" Before the person in front of him could react, the microbiologist took out a card and knocked it on his head, saying, "No, there's 5 million inside, not much more." Wei Xingyuan happily went to invite the female lead for credit, holding the card. A voice behind him said, "Why don't you remind him?" The microbiologist turned around and a shallow smile replaced his face. Remind him what? Remind him that the clothes on and shoes body don't fit well, although they are plain, they are not cheap. Remind him that people like Enshu are unlikely to appear in our school. He approached Tang Fenwu and said, "Brother, how many days until October 1st? Tang Fenwu reached out to block the school uniform on his chest and said, "What about the mother she mentioned in the hospital?" The microbiologist didn't take it seriously. She received this money. If it were really her family lying in the hospital, she wouldn't ignore it. If it wasn't, then if we unite to deceive people, it means we won't die from illness. Do you just believe in her like that? Wei Xing shrugged, he just believed in the protagonist's halo. Chapter 10. Sexy Tang Tang Online Dealing. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text.